September 7, 1996, Las Vegas, Nevada. A black BMW moved through the night with Tupac Shakur in the passenger seat and Death Row Records boss Suge Knight behind the wheel. Minutes earlier, Tupac had been photographed leaving the MGM Grand. Now, a white Cadillac pulls alongside the BMW and gunfire tears through the car. Tupac is hit multiple times. Knight survives with a graze to the head. Tupac will die 6 days later. For nearly 3 decades, no one will be charged with his murder. So why did the case finally move forward, and what does the evidence actually say about the people who were there? The story begins hours earlier, when Tupac and members of his entourage became involved in a confrontation at the MGM Grand with Orlando Anderson, a member of the South Side Compton Crips. Anderson was the nephew of Duane Keffe D. Davis, a gang figure who would later become the only person ever charged with Tupac's killing. Prosecutors now argue that the shooting was retaliation for that confrontation. That night, Tupac and Knight left the casino in the BMW. The car was traveling along Las Vegas Boulevard when a white Cadillac pulled alongside. Shots were fired into the BMW, striking Tupac. The investigation immediately became one of the most famous unsolved murders in American music. But fame did not make the case easier. Witnesses were reluctant to cooperate. The investigation produced no immediate arrest. And the person prosecutors now accuse of organizing the attack was not charged for another 27 years. And this is where Suge Knight becomes important. Knight was driving the car when Tupac was shot. That makes him one of the closest surviving witnesses to the shooting itself. In fact, he was the last known person physically beside Tupac immediately before the attack, because the two were together in the BMW when the gunfire began. But there is an important distinction. Saying Knight was the last person to see Tupac alive is too absolute. Tupac remained alive for 6 days after the shooting and was seen by medical personnel and others during that period. What can be established is that Knight was with Tupac at the moment the fatal attack began. For years, Knight's silence became part of the mystery, but silence is not the same thing as evidence of guilt. Knight has previously indicated that he did not know who fired the shots and that he would not tell police even if he did. Decades later, as the case finally moved toward trial, Knight again signaled that he did not want to become involved as a witness. In 2026, he said he was not interested in testifying in the prosecution of Davis. Then came the turning point. Duane Davis had spent years publicly discussing what happened. In interviews, documentaries, and a 2019 memoir, he described being inside the Cadillac involved in the shooting and claimed that he supplied the gun used in the attack. He did not claim to be the person who pulled the trigger. Prosecutors, however, argue that Nevada law allows them to hold him responsible as an accomplice if they prove he orchestrated the killing. Davis now says some of his earlier statements were fictional or made for attention and money. In July 2023, Las Vegas police searched a home connected to the investigation. 2 months later, Davis was arrested and charged with murder with a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Suddenly, the case that had spent decades in the category of unsolved became a criminal prosecution. But an arrest is not a conviction. That distinction matters because the prosecution still has to prove what Davis actually did, what he intended, and whether the evidence establishes his responsibility beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense has challenged the use of his public statements and argues that his stories were exaggerated or fabricated. And now, in August 2026, almost 30 years after the shooting, the case has reached the courtroom. Jury selection began on August 10th, with Davis facing the possibility of life in prison if convicted. The strange part is that the central mystery has never really been about whether Tupac was killed. Everyone knows that. The mystery is whether the decades of stories, admissions, silence, conflicting accounts, and lost time can finally be converted into evidence strong enough for a jury. Suge Knight was there when the bullets came. He survived. Tupac did not. Knight has chosen not to involve himself in Davis's trial, leaving one of the most important surviving witnesses outside the prosecution's story unless the court ultimately requires his testimony. And Duane Davis, once a man speaking publicly about Tupac's murder, now sits in court as the only person ever charged with it. 30 years later, the question is no longer simply who killed Tupac Shakur. It is whether the truth that survived all those years can survive a courtroom. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts in the comment section. and subscribe to the Daily Gossip Vault for your daily celebrity tea.